Good morning and welcome to Resilient Foundations. I'm joined again by our famous Doug Hall, who is one of my longtime coworkers, and we have gone through the trenches together. Today, we're going to talk about another highly complex project and the learnings from that and what we can help people avoid potentially in the future. But it was called Project Peppa, as in Peppa Pig. This project actually started out as a nuanced situation that we thought was going to be a quick win type of project. And Doug will talk about what really happened. It was not a quick win. So what happened that initiated this whole activity was we had welfare checks, which is when you go out and say you have a natural disaster, people have to get a text or some kind of an alert that says either proactively something's coming your way if we could do that. But usually it was in the context of something bad happened and we needed to make sure you were okay. And we would do that welfare check through technology that used talent data. I won't say employee because we had a lot of contractors in that base as well. So it was talent data broadly. And it would say, based on your location, we detect you're in this area. Are you okay? Respond back. And it usually was a text message to the individual. So we were having a lot of problems doing highly accurate welfare checks, and we decided we needed to change the quality of that. And in parallel, one night, it was actually, we lost the integration. It would batch up daily to our welfare check system, which was also our crisis management system for paging people out when we had a crisis. And overnight, the batch had failed and the data was completely corrupted. So we called what we called a priority zero incident, which was worst of the worst. And the CIO actually called me and said, this is not a P0. I don't understand why we're treating it so important. It's just a contact system. It's just a welfare check system. And we almost had it fixed at that point. So we just continued forward as P0 and stopped reporting on it publicly. But that very night, we had a 4-hour data center outage with the CEO on the call for the data center outage. And literally the team had to call the executives. We had manual call trees set up as a backup because we were a resiliency team. We had a backup for manual call trees, and we had to call everybody out manually because the system had been jimmy rigged temporarily to have the most critical teams fixed in the system until we got the batch fixed. But I'm calling the executives manually at like 11 o'clock at night to say,
Was it 11 or was it like at 2 in the morning? I thought it was
it
really
started,
late.
it started about 11 and then we rang it out. And by the time everybody got on the call, because it took forever to get everybody on the call because we didn't have the ring out, it was about 2 in the morning when the executives finally got on the call. So the next morning, the CIO called me and said, I think I was wrong, which is it kind of chuckled and said,
Luckily, we ignored you
yeah.
and just plowed.
I said, well, we actually ignored you anyway. No offense, but who could predict that you're going to have a 4-hour data center outage the
And I
same
just want to
day
say,
your crisis system goes out? See,
yeah, I just want to say that that was my first week as being a quarterback on the incident management team. And Rebecca quickly stepped in and goes, I'll handle this one because, yeah, you don't want to
well, the CEO
be.
had started interrogating people, and I thought, we got to get out from under this, get everybody quieted down, get moving forward with the
Yeah.
remediation as quickly as possible. But yes,
Yeah, pissed off CEO is not a good time to start with your training wheels on. Hi.
well, and this is also leaders having their teams' backs, right?
Yeah.
Let me take the bullet. You guys can.
Yeah,
I'll
this
take.
is a
I'll take the
surly
bullet.
crowd.
I'll
Yeah.
take the bullet. Awesome. So on that order, so this project actually then had a lot more legs. Initially, it was just fix this basic integration, but then it sort of took on a life of its own where we started with this root cause of the welfare checks, turned into crisis management issues. And then really when we initially said, well, what's the root cause? Well, it's the quality of the talent data, the HR data, and all the symptoms we can talk about, Doug, that like when you started to, we pulled the little thread And you started to take
Well,
this on as a program and unravel. Where's this thread going? What were some of the symptoms that you observed?
well, and I just, okay, let's thread sounds very nice. Basically, you gave me keys to a nice car, and it rammed right into the wall immediately off the lot. It was painfully obvious very quick that this was not an integration issue. It was not, just a little tweak. It was systemic data quality issues and system operational processing issues all over the place. And every time we turned around, there was you're kidding moments, and it was. I will say this, and I was telling Rebecca, I remember walking into a VP's office, who's our sponsor, and she just looked at me and she went, "Now what?" And I mean, that's where it got to, because I was always coming in going, well, we're doing this over here with this, and it's causing. So we just kept uncovering systemic issues, and you can start with. We started, and because this company, you know, and it's every technology company, pretty much every big corporation, you start out all with simple data models, databases, and you start expanding, expanding, expanding. In a hurry, you want more products, you want more functionality, you get more vendors, you expand. And then you start creating processes underneath the tables with data. You start, instead of doing the right due diligence and going through architectural reviews and data design, you just clone a database and then start spawning off all your processes on that cloud database. Well, guess what? Uh, One database adds another field, or gets rid of a field, or expands a field, and it breaks the integration. And now your data is corrupted out of date. And so,
You know what this reminds me of? That Michael Keaton movie, I think it was him, Multiplicity, where every clone.
yes, it's kept getting a little dumber. Oh my God, now I can't get that out of my head. That is perfect. That is exactly what was going on. And so we started out just kind of a small technology team with a quest to fix the integration of one system for welfare checks. Figured out it wasn't the actual integration of that system, it was data, and it was bad data. And just to give people an example of how this got out of hand quickly, throw a big rock into a pond and it just spirals outward. And then at each end of that, throw another rock, and then it starts its own spiraling outward. So, for example, and this is the funniest one, I think this is what actually got her to say, what, now what? We had a system that was building facilities, right? They did separate from onboarding, but integrated, because you need to have necessarily
Well,
phones and
that
all,
nexus
so all
between
the,
who are the people working in the company and where are they working?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
where are they working? What do they need? And so facilities gets from HR, from wherever, onboarding. Here's a row of employees we're hiring at these locations. They need this and so, and they're this level of office. So facilities takes it and does all that. Well, guess what? The data that's coming in misspelled cities all over, butchered cities. So instead of correcting that, they just said, "Oh, it's a new building, it's a new city, it's whatever." So that we had, like, I think, 6 San Franciscos spelled various ways, but we treated them as 6 separate cities. So how does that go back to what started all this? When the alerting system said, "Give me people in San Francisco," correct spelling, 5 buildings that were actually should have been called were not, because they didn't match the criteria. So this was going on everywhere, states. And so when Rebecca was like, we just kept adding stakeholder after stakeholder after stakeholder, and it impacted everybody, facilities, all that budgeting and all that estimation, taxing, our finance people, our HR people, our training, our benefits, all of this, compliance, privacy, legal. Every
Yeah,
single
PII.
department was involved.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're dealing with private information. Got to be really careful with it. Sensitive data.
Yeah. You got to watch out what you say where you are at the time. If I, that was my bad. We said, hey, it's snowing in Toronto.
Well, we had an
Anyway,
actual coworker who was getting, unbeknownst to her, was getting taxed in Washington, D.C., and she lived in Arizona. And so they had to go back and manually correct all of her pay stubs because the tax rate in DC is far higher than it is in Arizona.
or getting dubbed, in California when you weren't, so you got a
Right,
nice fat cost of living
right,
increase and different benefits. So
right,
yeah, it was spiraling. We had issues with how uh, people were classifying, and again, what would happen? Clone a database, start your own processes, break that integration. Other companies, their processes cloned their second database, and it just kept spiraling. So downstream would create a remote worker in a city that other systems couldn't recognize, and
right.
so there you're affixed to an office, you're a remote, and so it was just we just kept every day it was the onion. We were just like crying because and
So lots and lots of stakeholders. I think when you think about all the proliferation of the data, how did you contain the scope of this project to actually solve the original problem without all the unintended consequences that could have happened? Like what techniques did
we
you use? What actions did you take that as a leader?
this was another one, meditation. You just say, okay, because everybody is, we would start talking about how do we fix this, and every time we would start talking, whoever was the finger was like, okay, we have to fix this. Immediate, like no, and it was immediate hostility, and I don't mean like you can't do that. This was passionately, absolutely, you can't touch our systems, guys. Insert thousand reasons it's this kind of data, this kind of data. So we had to go through a process to just let everybody get it all out, make sure we had the right people. Get as they were saying what we can't do. We were like, all right, who do we need to make these decisions? Because we're going to have to fix something. We got to do something because it's wrong and we're causing all kinds of problems. And somebody's going to, something bad's going to happen. So we kind of let everybody say their piece and get on. And of course, because we don't know, right? So we had to go through a ton of hugging and virtual, because as we were listening, we were taking notes on, okay, you've got four downstream systems now. So we really had to stop with the what we thought was a problem and start saying, okay, how do we solve this? What systems are involved? What processes are involved? Where are you getting your data? And what's really funny, and this is where all the timelines start expanding because everybody thinks you can just get this like meeting. You can't. Because what you'll find out is I know the front end of the system, no idea where our data is coming from, did not have any clue how bad it was. So we had to do a lot of, aha moments and you're kidding me moments. But once we got everybody to realize, okay, now we can start mapping out this system gets their data from here. It now is out of sync, so we're putting a little fire on that one. Where are you sending your data and who's using that? So every single system downstream we had to pull in. So by the time we were done, it was a massive, massive list and a timeline of years and years to fix. And this is infrastructure at every level of the company, all kinds of, compliance, all kinds of bombs that you would step on if you did it bad. So it was an immediate, simple to complex and tread very lightly everywhere. And so once we mapped it all out, got everybody in it, confirmed our tentacles, that's when we went to executives. So we started raising the flag up like, yeah, immediately, like immediately that we got Houston, we have the problem.
One of the
That
recollections
was
I have of this is just the data diagrams that you and Leah would put together of you'd look at these things and it looked like a ball of yarn. It
Yeah.
was just a total ball of yarn.
Spaghetti.
Yeah.
It was like we picked up a big pot of spaghetti with the sauce and just
Yeah.
threw it
This
because,
thing, this data element goes to this system, goes to this system, goes to this system,
yeah,
and then all the replication isn't just like normally you would say as a learning, right? A system of record should not be copied. It should not be cloned. It should be accessed through an API or something, and then you use the data directly from the system of record. And if you are cloning it, which is actually what we were doing in the welfare system, is we were batching it into our system, but we were still trying to use the core system of record. We weren't trying to like clone it and then make our own, basically.
well, and that was the era of, oh, we're allowed to clone databases because we're not changing anything. Yes, you are. And I remember, and I forgot to mention this one as well. We had passionate discussions about data ownership. We have an entity of onboarding. That's the top. We hired somebody. That's when it started and down levels. Okay, where are they at? Tax benefits that would kick off that HR
Yes.
benefits, training, what compliance did they need, what taxes, rates, and this, us, and so, and what facility are they going to sit in? All of those things kicked off. So everybody had ownership of a piece of that employee. I'm sorry, what would you call it? Talent.
Yeah,
So
talent.
yeah, and then you start throwing in consultants and all those little nuances. So yeah, we could not get real traction up at the beginning because
Yeah.
people wanted to fight over those data points. You
You
can't
know,
change my process.
I don't think I've been at any company where talent data has actually been well managed, in that I don't think people generally understand that is one of the most critical data sets that you have in the whole company, because it
It
goes to
is.
every department, every system, everything you do. Because when I was doing a lot of information security infrastructure and identity and access management, when we kind of started working together, it was the same problem over decades, where that system or those systems actually rely on the HR data to know who should have access to internal systems, who should have access to payroll systems, who should have access to IT systems, who should have access to whatever, right? It's that is the core data for identity management. And even there, it was hard to get clean data in to be able to allow teams to authenticate properly to systems. And when you think about like SOX compliance, GDPR, all of those kinds of things that have come in,
Oh,
SOX compliance, the access people have to your systems and least privilege, you have to certify that every quarter. And so those systems that actually help you do all of that management, the initial access plus the certification, you actually have in the US, you have some pretty significant SOX criteria around that
yeah.
you can get fined
Well,
on. So it's really problematic.
I will tell you the one moment I'll never forget it when I think I actually uttered the what the fire truck without saying fire truck, and banged my head on my desk because we found out that facilities, idiots, and I will say that now because I don't touch them, they decided to change how they were classifying their buildings by airport codes. Stuck it in and just threw it downstream, and it just caused all kinds of problems. We're like, why do we care? Why are you, that was the, why did you do that?
Right.
You just broke everything because nobody even had an inkling that you were doing that. Well, we didn't know that was going to cause me issues.
So it really sounds like the greatest friction you had was just understanding the upstream, downstream linkages of the use of all this data, so that if it got changed for the intention of fixing the problem we were trying to deal with, that it wasn't going to break other systems. And
Right.
then
And I
design and
don't know. I don't
implementation,
know.
right? People just move
Yeah,
fast in
I don't.
isolation.
Yeah, just throw something in. I didn't have any. I think it works this way. And I will throw in
Yeah,
another one. Let's change the software product that we're using. So add a bunch
right,
more. And so they were doing that as well, all over the
right.
place. Got a new HR system with that because it's new and shiny.
Right.
But what it highlighted is you and I always in the back room, under the basement, in the cellar, even under the foundation of where all this data sits.
Yeah.
Organizations just move pieces around, people
Right.
around, and just make these changes without even a second thought.
Yeah.
And you don't give anybody time to breathe to get the organization set up and understanding exactly what changed and now who's
Yeah.
doing what. And then they change it again 6 months later. So that causes a lot
Yeah.
of dead ends that you now need to start investigating who owns this app, whose system just implemented what, and who owns it. That's what we
Yeah.
spent a lot of time. And what was hilarious was, and I think you're fond of, I wanted to put stuff in red all the time. And because it was like I could see this on fire coming,
Right.
and there was always these meetings where we're not making any progress. Why are we not making it? Why aren't there any widgets, things flopping around? Why can't you put something in? And so we had to painfully explain how complex this extremely fragile system is,
Yeah.
and
I just came from
why
a
were we having all these problems?
Yeah. I just came from a
And that,
client call this morning, and we weren't on with the client. We were just talking about the client's project. And that actually was the conversation of, you got an ugly baby, excuse the language. Right? We're gonna have to tell the
yeah,
client their data is just not any good. And what's happening when we're trying to actually build the application that they need and the automation and the AI that they need, the underlying data quality is just not good enough. And it's going to cause bigger problems in the operations if we move forward, just adding AI, for example. Data quality is front and center. And I was at another client, probably 2020, I think it was, where they were actually getting looked at by a federal regulator for the quality of their operational reporting and the decisions executives
yeah.
were making, because like if you would look at the same number, it looks like it should be the same thing. And it was really critical operational data around like revenue and customers and things like that. And you're making an executive level decision on this data, but one team spewed the data with a certain way and another team spewed the data because they didn't have data dictionaries. They didn't have standards for how data would be used. They used different data, different calculations, and they called it the same thing. And so executives from different areas were looking at this thinking they had one answer, but it was really another answer because it was not consistent. And a big part of the regulator problem with it was, we can't trust your financial reports or anything that you say
Yeah.
around your executive decisions because you don't have control of your data. You don't have stewardship of your data. You don't have comprehension and consistency on use of your data. So that was a big, really big project to fix that. And
Well,
data
and it's
governance.
funny because, well, this company finally started moving, and I think you had a lot to do with that. Our team did because we kept screaming, and it was funny because we kept having incidents like way over and off the viewer to the left and down and north, and we start finding out that this system that we're looking at did something and it caused incidences way downstream in other venues that shouldn't have pieced
Right.
together. But
Right.
people just kept saying, "Oh, I can use this data for this," and so we would break stuff, and everybody would not really put two and two together. We started putting two and two together that we have, and I keep using the term systemic, and that's what it was. And the
And
more we kept sticking bad data on it, that's what happens.
and when you say systemic,
Oh,
the root cause of systemic is what? Probably it's the lack of data ownership, lack of ownership by
yeah.
people who do data governance and data architecture. Because a lot of times with talent data, I find it's owned by the HR organization, who often does not have very significant IT support.
Well, and I think it also happens because it's a long stream, right? You
Yeah.
start up at the top, you hire that person. And that group just says, "Yep, we hired this person." They walk away. They just let it drop, and the next system and two systems take it. They do their thing and they let it go. there's no A to Z viewpoint and ownership of that. And
Well,
you
and life
have to.
cycle, because people move,
Yeah.
people change roles. Um, when you think about the life cycle of a piece of talent information and the proliferation of that talent data across an enterprise, even a small company, you proliferate that data pretty pretty widely into SaaS. Like you have SaaS tools. I'm going to put this person over in this tool, add an account for them over here,
And
even
then
if
it
it's
just goes
manual.
away.
Yeah, it goes away.
I've done my part. Yeah, that's the governance piece was missing. And the policies surrounding it. Like, right? You can't just clone a database. You have to at least get it out there and document that you're doing this, where this data is. So
Right.
they started learning their lesson and they started getting a data repository to help write, some of the requirements for it. So I'm like, if anybody knows data quality issues, because we looked at all the projects we did in these companies, you start seeing a pattern and you're saying, here's the breakage. It's not a bad fix. It is if you let it go. And somebody at some point's got to, I say it all the time, infrastructure's not sexy, right? It's
Yes,
not.
it's not
It's
not
not big
not until you have a
shiny.
problem.
It's not, yeah, until something breaks, and then
Right,
that's when you're going to pay the high price.
right.
And so
So
at least they started to realize.
yeah. So when all was said and done, did you solve the original problem that was identified, and would you consider this project successful, and why,
Well, if
or why not?
we went to, well, no, well, we did win, right? We came in with this. We gave them the big salami. Here is everything, and here's how we recommend that we fix all this, and here's how long it's going to take, and here's the budget and people and the departments involved and risks and all that good project due diligence. That was that, and then we picked them off the floor and said, okay, here's one of the quick wins that we can have, because there are certain spots where we can say the data, everybody's using the same data, or at least we can start forcing the employees using our extranet, our employee
I forgot
portal.
about that. Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, every 6 months you throw up. Or it was maybe even it was every month at first. Like, here's your address we have on file. Is this correct? Yes, no. Change it, confirm it. So we started bits and we had big fights over this again. Like, oh, you can't. That's too overwhelming. You can't use our portal this much. You have to. So we had to bits and pieces. We'll start with phone number because that's what we need. Phone number and location, and then address, and spousal, and then emails, and your home and primary numbers. And so we worked numbers. So we started confirming, making it, they could not get off of it. They had to use it, they had to do it. And then we started air mailing out to their bosses, their directs, and supervisors in case they didn't respond. So that was the big win. We were at least able to do that and get at least the data for our welfare checks and all that by confirming and making employees tell us this is correct. This is not.
Yeah, I
And
remember now. I
a
remember
lot
that
of
that's all
like,
coming back. That was actually a big win, and I think that's the other
yeah,
key learning out of projects this big. Once you start to unravel something really, when you start to unravel something this big, that you find ways to show value very quickly, even if they are short term resolution to get to any kind of an improvement, and then you build on that more systemically.
well, and that was we all sit down. I, this inside joke between Rebecca and I, we had a meeting with all the big stakeholders for a week,
I remember that.
and
Yeah.
the room. And one of the individuals from, I believe, Nebraska started, he was always animated. And so his arms, so I think somebody, might have been me or might have been Rebecca, put the, big inflatable
Oh,
wavy arm guy.
now I think
And
it's a big Grinch.
that was probably one of the funniest things ever, and it's still today. How long ago was this project? Like
Oh, I don't even want to carbon date myself,
15?
but it became our team mascot.
Yeah, and it's still today. I send that person that GIF. Wavy hands area. And
That
he
big
still
green
just comes
thing you
back
see
in
in front of car
tears. Yeah.
dealerships and businesses. Now I saw one that's a Grinch, which is actually pretty funny. Awesome. So,
Oh,
okay, so Doug,
yeah.
when we think about this
That was
project, and
what I was gonna say
yeah,
was that was a big win. As
yes,
stupidly small as that sounded, that helped.
yes,
That was our big delivery. We're like, what can we deliver for the most bang? Get
yeah,
us, a step closer. And
yes,
it was that. Let's get the data confirmed what's correct.
yeah,
Can't get rid of these 65 addresses we have. Which one is actually?
right.
That was it. That was kind of a big win. And it's
That was
still
actually a
I
big
was
win.
every time I was there when that would pop up. We did that, look around everybody because they were getting it all at the same time. We
And
did
I think
that.
HR was pretty happy with that too, because it helped clean up their systems a lot. And they were a great partner
Yeah.
in that program. They were a very good partner in that program.
Yeah, because
Awesome.
I remember we had people living in states
That
for
they weren't supposed to
hiring.
be in,
So
which caused HR problems, legal problems. Yes.
yeah.
Oh boy. Yeah. We now know where you
Well,
live.
it was fun.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, Doug, we've been through the project trenches, that is for sure. We've been in the deep mine of project
But
management and
the funny thing
big
is
projects.
I loved all of our projects, even the one, I would say one, that we crashed into the mountain. I still love them all. They were so much
Yeah,
fun, so challenging.
challenging. I think that was the
It
key word.
was, yeah.
Big problems to solve, right? It was always a big problem to solve, and the uniqueness of each one made it interesting. And that's
And
where it takes
I think we
leadership.
said if our desks weren't on fire, then
Yes.
we were bored.
Yeah,
Which part of my desk is on the bigger fire?
right. Yes, we had some big wins, and it's been a good run. So thanks again for your time today, Doug. I think when we look at big programs, how you get through as a leader, these are the kinds of things that you might come up against when you're in the project trenches. And we're talking a little bit on the technical side in some of these conversations, but the principles remain the same. That it's a lot of problem solving, it's a lot of working with teams, it's a lot of looking for root cause, working with key stakeholders, and trying to find the quick wins as you move through your programs. Thanks for
And having
joining
fun.
and having a fun time and having a fun time. So thanks for joining me again today, Doug. We've got a couple more sessions coming up, and I appreciate your time and the great conversations we're having. And for those of you who joined us today, thanks for joining Resilient Foundations. We hope you found this useful, and please like, subscribe, and share. We'll see you soon.